Welcome to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. You can follow me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. Wherever I am on social media at The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me. I am on X, Instagram, Facebook, True Social, Getter, you name it, wherever I am at The Carl Jackson Show. Also, subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcasts. I'm on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Please, if you go to YouTube and Rumble, if you would review us, I would really appreciate that, because what it does, if you give us a 5 or higher score there, basically it allows more people to see the podcast, and that would help us out tremendously. And if you would like, share, whatever, wherever you're watching, whatever they call you to do, subscribe, follow, whatever it is, please do that. We would certainly appreciate that. Guys, I got so much to talk about today, it's not even funny. I'm going to talk briefly about a Supreme Court case that no one is talking about, that no American is talking about, that every American should know about. But also I want to talk about some of the things that happened over the weekend that are very important. The border invasion continues. The Texas Governor Greg Abbott continues to remain defiant against the Biden administration that wants open borders because they want more Democrats imported into the United States. One of the biggest pieces of news that hit this weekend is the 3 U.S. soldiers that were killed. Let me read this from my phone because I pulled it up, and I just want to make sure that I'm giving you all of the correct info. But guys, this is going to continue to get worse. It's frustrating. I got to be honest with you. It's so frustrating coming on here knowing that there's so little that can be done for the remainder of this year. The only thing that can be done is defunding some of these bureaucracies and staying firm against the Biden administration. And so that's left up to the Congress. That's left up to us to make sure that we make the calls, do whatever we need to do to get out the vote to make sure we defeat these guys in November. And it isn't going to be easy. Matt Taibbi, I'll have to go. The article was too lengthy. I'll have to go through it, sometime this week. But basically, the left is setting up to do everything they did in 2020 again in 2024. And Matt Taibbi makes this point pretty clearly and thoroughly in a column that he wrote towards the latter part of last week, where they're using lawfare, some of the same people that are involved. They're looking at every which way possible. If Trump doesn't get elected, or even if he does get elected, to use lawfare in order to just totally make his next presidency either non-existent or just absolutely miserable like the first one. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with communists, not to mention they've got to get out the vote effort. They've got tons of money that we don't have. And so this has to be taken seriously. The organization at the RNC completely stinks, but I'll have to save that for another day. I did want to make mention of it because it is a very important piece by Matt Taibbi. We know who's going to the Super Bowl. San Francisco and Kansas City. A lot of people it's trending online that's totally rigged. But I do believe, listen, the better teams won at the end of the day, and so it is what it is. I think both of the games were relatively good games yesterday, albeit a low scoring for the Kansas City Chiefs games, but I think it was a matter of plays not being made, and I feel like the same is true for the Detroit Lions. I got to be honest with you, and I love the Chiefs, and I actually like the 49ers. 49ers back in the day was probably the first team that I really rooted for before I became a Rams fan. And so anyway, I had this thing with the quarterback for the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff, where, he was doing okay for the Rams when he was playing for us. I thought they should have gave him more time, but then you have Matthew Stafford. He came in, he wins the Super Bowl the first year. Jared Goff goes off. He's traded to Detroit Lions, and I mean, it's like a Cinderella story. So I was torn. I was torn yesterday. I really was, because I wanted to see the Lions do better. But it just seems to me, I know a lot of people think that it's rigged. And listen, the whole Taylor Swift thing, I'm not going to lie. Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift makes it to the Super Bowl. I mean, don't get me wrong. I can see Why people would say, man, this is what the NFL wanted all along. I do believe that it's what the NFL wanted all along. I don't necessarily believe that it's rigged because I just don't believe that so many guys will put in so much hard work into a season and an after season or in the playoffs and just try and just throw it away, especially when they still have contracts and money that could be made in the future. I don't think guys would throw games for the sake of making sure that Taylor Swift is seen in the NFL. But I do believe that this is the scenario. There's no doubt about it. So I understand the questions that this is the scenario that the NFL definitely wanted. All right, so here was the big news over the weekend that I want to make sure that I tap into. And I know sports fans, that was big news, but this is bigger news because things are getting scarier, right? We have the invasion on the border that continues. Like I mentioned earlier, we have some video of Joe Biden that we'll play for you in just a second here. Blaming Trump for the problems overseas and with Iran. Meanwhile, it is Joe Biden and his administration that has funded Iran, that continues to be weak, trying to curtail the Israeli offensive in the Gaza Strip, which is absolutely insane to me. Basically siding with Hamas, in my opinion. Israel needs to go forward and eliminate every terrorist possible. I hope they kill every single Hamas soldier that exists, but ultimately the big dog is Iran. And eventually, listen, because Biden has been so weak, whether it's the Houthi rebels, whether it's been, Hamas, whether it's been giving money to Iran, listen, this isn't good. So here's the latest. This from, actually, let me read. I see one from Town Hall. Let me read this short little column from Fox News. 3 American troops killed, 25 injured in an attack on Jordan base near the Syrian border. So 3 U.S. service members were killed and at least 25 others were injured in a drone attack on an outpost in northeast Jordan. That's near the Syrian border. This according to U.S. Central Command. They confirmed that yesterday, Sunday. A senior U.S. defense official told Fox News the injury toll could rise to higher than 25 Americans. Most, if not all, of those injured and killed were Army soldiers based in northern Jordan near the Syrian border at a base known as Tower 22, which has been in support of the counter-ISIS mission for a year, according to the official. Some of the 25 plus injured have been medically evacuated from that base, likely to Landstuhl in Germany. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Landstuhl. This, according to the official, it is not clear if they were hit while sleeping in the residential compound. At the base, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is actively engaged in discussions taking place at the White House, excuse me, about how to respond on January 28th. And let me just say this, Lloyd Austin is a joke. The Biden administration is a joke. Jake Sullivan, they're all a joke. Guys, we're just not in good hands with the leadership that we have. It's as simple as that. The reason why we're seeing such aggression is you can trace this all the way back to Afghanistan. You don't have to be a military savant in order to know this. This is just basic common sense. Once they saw that Joe Biden did absolutely nothing with that disastrous withdrawal, and he let the Taliban take $85 billion or whatever it was worth of equipment. We saw 3 service members that were murdered, and then we left behind Americans. Joe Biden told the world exactly who he was, or told the worldly dictators exactly who he was, and they decided to press him at that point. That's why Putin invaded Ukraine. He saw that Joe Biden was a weakling. He decided to test him. He put his troops on the border of Ukraine forever, saw that Joe Biden said nothing about it. NATO said nothing about it. So Russia pressed on. This is where we find ourselves. We're in a precarious position. And now you actually have the Houthi rebels that are Iran backed, killing American soldiers, killing 3 and injuring 25. Guys, they're just going to keep ramping this. I mean, this is just common sense, right? You don't have to be a foreign policy expert to know. They're just going to keep ramping this up. All right. And eventually they're going to try to draw us into war because Biden and Lloyd Austin don't have a courage to put a stop to this. The same is true for Israel and Hamas. America needs to back the heck up out of the way and let the IDF go bat crazy on Hamas. Oh, Carl, there's going to be innocent civilians. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be flippant about it. I understand that lives are going to be lost. I understand that some innocent lives are going to be lost. And I use that word some intentionally because a lot of the people, a lot of the residents voted for Hamas. 60-70% of the residents voted for Hamas. They had the chance to vote for that terrorist organization or a terrorist organization, the Fatahs, I believe, that were a little less crazy than Hamas. They voted for Hamas. All right. This is what you get. The people in that region of the world that don't believe in Western civilization, that are not a democracy like you have in Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East. Guess what, guys? They're crazy. They're evil. They're Islamic jihadists. This is what they believe. They believe that Israel is the little Satan and we're the big Satan. So Joe Biden and Lloyd Austin need to get the heck up out of the way when it comes to these people. When it comes to Hamas and Israel, and let them go, just let them go buck wild. Let's go ahead and play that video. This is our commander in chief. All right, quote unquote, Joe Biden. Here's what he had to say about Trump and Iran in 2020, and now we could look at the ramifications of his very policies. Let's go ahead and roll the video, por favor. Gabe?
6 months ago, here in New York City, I made the case that Donald Trump was.
Man, wait. Stop the video. Stop the video. Gabe, look at that man. Is that a different man or what? Dead serious. Just 4 years ago. Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. I mean, the guy looks coherent. The guy looks like he's still somewhat there. Sounds like it, looks like it. Compared to what he looks like today, I'm sorry. I just know that was so clear. I just had to say something. All right, let's roll it.
In the past few days, in the wake of the killing of the Iranian General Soleimani, I think Donald Trump has proven beyond that comment, beyond dispute. The haphazard decision-making process that led up to it, the failure to consult with our allies or Congress, and the reckless disregard for the consequences that would surely follow was, in my view, dangerously incompetent. And folks, in wake of such an enormous escalation that has exploded geopolitics in the region and put the United States and Iran on a collision course, what would we expect from an American president? Well, what have we heard from President Trump? We have not heard a sober-minded explanation to reassure the American people that this decision and its consequences were thought through. No level-headed words meant to dial down the tensions and to take us off the path of conflict. No press conference or consultation with our Congress. No, what we've heard so far from this president are tweets, threats, and tantrums. All we've heard from this administration are shifting explanations, evasive answers, repeated assertions of an imminent threat without the necessary evidence to support that conclusion. And since this is a president with the history of lying about virtually everything, who has destroyed his own credibility and that of the United States on the global stage, neither the American people nor our allies, and indeed no one around the world seems to be taking his word for it. If there was an imminent threat that required this extraordinary action, that we're owed an explanation and the facts to back it up. But these matters are of deadly import, and to me, they are unmistakably clear. Donald Trump does not have, let me make it clear, does not have the authority to go to war with Iran without congressional authorization.
Man, guys, first off, I'm just tripping off, just like I said earlier. I'm sorry, I had to stop that video. I'm tripping off the fact of how much younger Joe Biden looks and sounds in 2020. And guys, I'm pretty sure you can check my tweets back then. Back then, I thought he was suffering with dementia. Back then, I was saying that there's no way this guy would get in office and last 6 months or a year. There was no way. I was saying that back then. I'm looking at that video now and I'm like, good Lord, if that Joe Biden still exists, he sounds competent. It's just crazy. It's crazy how far we've come in such a short period of time. Now you look at him, the guy looks like he's aged 50 years since then. And I mean, obviously, his mental faculties are not in place as well. So that's extremely crazy. But anyway, Joe Biden said all of this. Trump is incompetent. Trump is going to take us into a war with Iran without congressional approval. Meanwhile, this guy was backing and funding Iran. And essentially, Joe Biden and the Biden administration and the Democratic Party is responsible for the wars that we see breaking out that Israel is playing a part of. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It was Israel that founded Hamas. It's Israel that funded, I'm sorry, not Israel. It's Iran that funded Hamas. It's Iran that funded Hezbollah. It's Iran that's funding the Houthis. All of these are just proxies for Iran. And they have the support, or they have that power, Iran does, because for one, we've ignored the uprisings that have taken place by the Iranian citizens, the people that actually do love their country. We've not helped them. We've not supported them. They've not asked for money or military support, although I think they would need a bit of military support, or at least some guns or something like that. But they've not asked for any of that. They've asked for our support. We haven't given them that. But I tell you what, who they have, who Joe Biden funded the mullahs. And this is the result. More Americans are now being killed. And you can argue whether Americans should be in that territory or not. That's one argument. I completely get. The fact of the matter is we're there, and now Americans are being killed and injured. No telling how severe those injuries are. We don't know if there's limbs missing. We don't know if there's permanent brain damage to these 25 soldiers that were harmed, that were injured. I mean, it's just crazy. Okay, so other quick headlines that I want to bring you real quick. Republicans introduce articles of impeachment against Alejandro Mayorkas. And Gabe, actually, instead of this video that you have up now, will you get me the video of the illegal aliens that have been bombarding our border, invading our border? I may save that video for a separate podcast. If you guys haven't seen this video with Tom McDonald and Ben Shapiro, this rap video, it's actually pretty good. It's better than I thought. I think Tom McDonald is amazing, but I wasn't sure how Ben Shapiro would come across in a video with Tom McDonald. And I have to admit, I think they pulled it off. I was pleasantly surprised. All right, so now here's the second headline. Republicans introduce articles of impeachment against Alejandro Mayorkas. This sounds great, right? But they get rid of Alejandro Mayorkas. Who do we put in? I think Alejandro Mayorkas is just a face. At this point, I think whomever they put in will do the same thing. I think Republicans should have did this a long time ago if they were going to do it. Now I almost wonder if it's worth keeping him in to use him as a punching bag. I don't know. I just think Republicans acted way too slowly on this. So here it is from Town Hall. House Republicans unveiled articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas yesterday. It was introduced by Mark Green, Republican from Tennessee. The resolution accuses Mayorkas of, quote, willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law, close quote, and breach of public trust, quote unquote. And actually, perhaps he should be impeached regardless, even if we know they're going to do the same thing, simply because maybe Democrats need to understand that Republicans will actually hold them accountable and do something. That would be nice for a change, wouldn't it? Republicans included two articles. One states that Mayorkas violated immigration laws, while a second article accuses the secretary of failing to uphold his duties, misleading Congress, and obstructing the GOP's investigation. He also has been unable to detain a sufficient number of migrants as required in the code. All right. So anyway, that's that. This from Blaze Media. Between the fiscal year 2017 through 2020, there were a combined 11 individuals on the terrorist watch list caught attempting to cross the U.S. southern border. However, there were an alarming 169 non-citizens on the terrorist watch list trying to enter the country in fiscal year 2023 alone. So from 2017 to 2020, there were combined 11 individuals on the terrorist watch list caught attempting to cross the border. So 3 years, or actually 4, if you count the total year 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, you get 11 individuals. Now compare that to 169 individuals on the terrorist watch list trying to flood the border in just 1 year. And we know this is going to happen. We played the video the other week of this guy that happened to be a terrorist, evidently was in prison in some other country before he was released and came to the United States to wreak havoc. And he was like, you guys aren't smart enough to know who I am. You're going to know who I am, so on, etc. A third story, Border Patrol Union announces support for Texas's National Guard. The official Border Patrol Union voiced its support for Texas as Governor Greg Abbott takes action against President Joe Biden's catastrophic border policies. This week, the National Border Patrol Council and you know what, Gabe? We'll just go ahead and roll that video. Roll that video in a loop for a couple of times, if you don't mind. You guys need to see this. I mean, these numbers are astronomical. What are you going to do with these people? How are they going to arrest them? How are they going to find them once they enter into the United States? When the Border Patrol are essentially just babysitting. That's why what Abbott is doing at the border, kudos to the fact he's doing it. Honestly, I just thought it was a political stunt at first, but it appears, whether it's by, I don't know, because he has to live up to standards. You have all these other Republican governors, 25 or 26 states now, that are saying, we got your back, Abbott. So maybe he doesn't want to cave to the pressure. Maybe that's emboldened him and helped him to feel a little stronger. I don't know. But yeah, you need to do anything possible to deter more people from invading this country illegally. And technically, this is what this is, guys. You don't think these people are going to come in and change it? They're not trying to assimilate. They're just trying to get. You don't think they're going to change the culture? This is just unbelievable. I mean, just look at this video. For those of you that are on YouTube and Rumble, look at the video. Where are they going to go? I can tell. I live in Florida. Governor DeSantis has been really good on this stuff, given the fact that we're so far away from, or despite the fact that we're so far away from the border. But even as I go out and I work my day job, guys, I'm seeing illegal aliens on the corners more and more. They disappeared for a while. Now I'm seeing more. I'm seeing more women. I'm seeing more children. It's just unbelievable to me what we're seeing. And this is not going to slow down until we literally have someone else in the White House. And I hope that's the case. Don't take it for granted. Make sure you get out and vote and tell other people to get out and vote, because we're going to have to outwork the cheaters on the left, because they're going to try to cheat. It's going to be lawfare. It's going to be election engineering. They're going to go for the states that they need. Listen, Democrats are going to win the states that Democrats are going to win. Republicans are going to win the states that we're going to win. And guys, I'm telling you, it's still going to be a swing state race. That's the way that it is. So just brace yourself for that. Man, I haven't seen this one. Unbelievable. This one looks like perhaps a bunch of Haitians. And remember, there was a period of time where Haitians came to the southern border, and then there was that big whipping. It wasn't a whipping. They actually weren't being whipped. It was a Border Patrol agent on a horse using his reins, but they had come from different parts of the world. Venezuela, Ecuador, different places where they had migrated to, but now they found out that the border was open in the United States, and many Haitians, not just from Haiti, but different parts of South America, that moved to different parts of South America, came to the U.S. border. And then you guys realize what happened. They were all eventually released into the interior of the United States. So let me get back to this story real quick, and then I want to close it out with this story on the Supreme Court. So Border Patrol Union announces support for Texas's National Guard. The official Border Patrol Union voices support for Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Abbott's action against Joe Biden's catastrophic border policies. This week, the National Border Patrol Council, released a statement saying that, quote unquote, rank and file Border Patrol agents appreciate and respect the measures Abbott is taking to stem the historic amount of illegal migrants pouring into the U.S. border. under the Biden administration, the 18,000 member union dismissed headlines that claim they would arrest Texas National Guardsmen for following their lawful orders. Instead, the National Border Patrol Council vowed to work together and respect each other's jobs, adding that unlawful orders will not be tolerated. Wow, that's big. That's big. You have you have this Border Patrol union that's saying, listen, basically saying even if Biden orders us to seize the border and to arrest Texas National Guardsmen, they're saying they're not going to do it. I mean, that's what it sounds like. They're not going to follow any unlawful orders. Wow. That's good. That's good news. Let's hope that, because that was something that I was concerned about and feared. What if it turned to Border Patrol against Texas National Guard? One thing that Governor Ron DeSantis that was phenomenal. I hope other states will follow his lead. I mean, just straight up gangster. I mean, I know a lot of you out there don't like DeSantis, or at least you're pretending you don't, because it's like it's all Trump or nothing. But guys, I appreciate real conservatives in the conservative movement. Ron DeSantis is one of them. He doesn't have the charisma as Trump. He never will. But he is a freaking phenomenal governor. He is somebody that gets things done. One thing that he did was he created the Florida State Guard, so that in the event that he, not just for Floridians, but now he can send them to places like Texas to help out on the border, and Biden can't seize control of them because they're state-led, not National Guardsmen. I mean, that's just freaking brilliant. All right, so Biden's approval numbers continue to drop. I really don't know if I care about that. I mean, I know a lot of people are mentioning that, but Biden's approval numbers for his third year in office reached second lowest since Jimmy Carter. Guys, all that matters is votes. Polls don't matter. All that matters are votes. All right, in the long run, I'm not getting all up into the polls. All right, so UNRWA fires 12 employees amid allegations linking them to the October 7th attacks against Israel. Carl, who is the UNRWA? They are the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. So these are people that are sent into war-torn areas to help people out and stuff like that, give them food, water. Oh, no. They were actually the homies of Hamas. So here's the story, all right? So eight countries have paused future funding to the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. Amid an investigation into allegations some workers participated in the October 7th attack on Israel. I mean, some of them were found to be hiding some of the hostages. I mean, the UN workers. The agency known as the UNRWA is entrusted with moving much-needed humanitarian aid into Gaza, which has been under intense bombardment by the IDF in its mission to annihilate Hamas militants after the October strike. The countries pausing funding include the U.S., Germany, UK, Australia, Italy, Canada, Finland, and the Netherlands. The UNRWA said Friday that Israeli authorities provided information that several of its employees were involved in the attacks. The allegations were made against 12 employees. The 12 employees are working for Hamas. I mean, guys, it's really as simple as that. Houthi militants attacked British oil tanker in the Red Sea. You know, thanks to Joe Biden, these groups that are backed by Iran, they have a lot of money to do this, a lot of weaponry to be able to do this. All right, let me do this. I think I'll use that video with Ben Shapiro for another podcast. You guys are seeing how the sausage is made. I'm just making decisions like that on the fly. Hey, by the way, guys, please support my sponsor. I don't have a podcast without them. It's really as simple as that. Not to mention MyPillow, Mike Lindell, great company, a great leader, American products. Guys, we're going to need more of this. You know, it's one of the reasons that I had on Jason Nelson last week, now of prepperbeef.com. It was wholecows.com, but prepperbeef.com. American products. Mike Lindell is offering you a good night's rest, Great prices. There are specials going on. The media is trying to take them out. The left is trying to take them out, even some on the right. But listen, he's using his money for good, providing American jobs, American manufacturing, and fighting for your freedom as well. Go to mypillow.com. Take advantage of all of the deals that they have available to you, from Giza Dream Sheets to My Pillow 2.0 to My Slippers, even the dog beds, you name it. mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, at the Radio Podcast Square at the top of the page or in the Radio Podcast Square, or you can give them a call, 800-858-0263. Again, that number, 800-858-0263. Use my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, as a promo code, and whatever deals they have available are or will be available to you. All right, real quick. Let me go over this because I think this is important. And here's what I'm going to do more of this year. Guys, as we lead up to the 2024 election, I'm going to talk to you about policy. A lot of people want to talk about polls and personality and all that kind of stuff, man. Those things are important. They're important. But ultimately, if we do get a victory that I hope and pray we do in November of this year, we've got to talk about the policies that are making us weak, because you have to look. There's going to be a post-Trump era. All right. And as much as you love Trump on a national level, I got to tell you, there's so many rhinos that are in the Republican Party, and so many rhinos even that are currently in Washington, D.C. And I've resorted to using the term rhino, despite the fact that I don't like it. I don't think it works as frequently. Whatever. It's easier. All right. People know it. I'm just talking about moderates. I'm talking about people that are not going to try to promote an America First agenda, but people that are going to want to get reelected, and they aren't going to fight the hard fights. And I think we saw this during the first Trump administration. Lord willing, he has a second one. We'll have to see what they do. But what I want to make sure that I do is to bring you information that you can call your congressmen and senators on to make sure that we apply pressure for the sake of your own freedom. So here's the story. Have you guys heard of the Chevron Deference case that is headed before the Supreme the Supreme Court, or actually is in front of the Supreme Court? As a matter of fact, I think it's been over a year ago now. We had one of the attorneys, if I recall correctly, that was representing Loper Bright Enterprises in the case. And these were fishermen. And I'll go through the story. I'll reiterate the story for you or refresh your memory on it. These were fishermen that were being forced to pay for government employees sitting on their boats to regulate them, to make sure they were doing everything the government wanted them to do arbitrarily, even if it meant they had to give up that space and not hire another employee, catch less fish. Absolutely insane. And they had to pay for that government employee. Just insane. So here's the story. It's called Chevron Deference. Now, this is the Supreme Court case that nobody is talking about, that every American should know about. All right. So here's the summary. This from Just the News. So the Supreme Court this week began hearing arguments in a case that could have a deep impact on the federal government's power to set regulations across a wide array of areas. The decision could be among the most consequential the court will make in a generation. At the heart of the case is a legal doctrine called Chevron Deference. This is a precedent that emerged from a 40-year-old case involving Chevron, which is the oil giant we all know of, and an environmental lobbying group named the National Resources Defense Council. The original debate was over the meaning of the word source, quote unquote. So that word source in the 1963 Clean Air Act. So that's what the debate, that's what the argument is over. What does the word source mean in the 1963 Clean Air Act? But it came to mean that when interpretations are split over ambiguous regulations and regulations that aren't so clear, or policies, judges should defer to the positions taken by federal agencies because of their supposed expertise. So if a company like Loper Bright says, wait a minute, this thing says this, or this regulation says this, and they go before a court, they take the EPA, or let's say whomever they would take to court and say, wait a minute, the regulation says this. If the EPA or whomever says, well, this is what this means, The courts would say, okay, well, I know you brought this case and yeah, this does make sense, but this is what the experts in the federal government says. So we're going to side with the experts because we're going to give them the deference. We're going to give them the power to define what the term means because they are the experts, despite the fact that most of the people working in the federal government are not experts. I mean, it's crazy. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong camera. All right. So anyway, so the problem with this too is if you get a bunch of communists that are running bureaucratic agencies already circumventing the will of the people, they'll impose their agenda on us, even if it's at odds with, we the people, even if it's at odds with the Constitution. That's what they'll do. And then Congress is no better. Congress ceded their power to federal agencies. This is what Just the News writes. In the wake of the doctrine, Congress began to write open-ended laws with room for interpretation. Why would Congress do that? Guys, here, let me just finish reading this and I'll respond. Purposely leaving the final decision to federal agencies. Why would Congress do this? We saw this happen during the John Boehner era as well. Why would Congress do that? Ceding more and more power to the federal government. It's because they don't want to take a stand. That's the problem with most of the people in the federal government in Washington, D.C. They don't want to take a stand. They want to be comfortable. They want to retain their jobs. They want Washington, D.C. to be a career for them and not just a place where they go to make sure they fight for a few years, couple years, whatever, to get government off their backs and leave. Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo is the name of the case, and Gina Raimondo is the current Secretary of Commerce. So the case is called Loper Bright Enterprises again versus Raimondo. This is after 40 years. It's made it onto the Supreme Court docket, thank God, and it could finally force Congress to do their jobs and actually legislate and take power away from these big bureaucracies. Frankly, I believe the bureaucracies should be cut. Donald Trump gave some, I saw online, I need to go and print these out. He gave some things that he would like to do to decrease the size and scope of government in the bureaucratic state. I got to be honest with you. I was underwhelmed. I was a little surprised. I think he's going to have to do more. I think he's going to have to go in day one and just cut the funding for a lot of these agencies and then work with Congress to say, I'm not budging. We're going to cut. I mean, we are going to cut these freaking agencies. But anyway, I got to get that list for you because I appreciate what he's trying to do. And maybe he's being a little subtle since he's being persecuted like nobody's business. He doesn't want to give it all away. That's a possibility. But I will tell you what needs to be done. And some of these agencies don't need to exist anymore. All right. And now day one, they need to be cut down 50%. That was one of the things I did like about DeSantis. Even though he doesn't have the charisma, he's a guy that just brings policy and he just works on the policy. And I think from day one, Trump should do that. Come in first day. If he does get elected, 50% cut against all the bureaucratic agencies right at the start. Get rid of all the non-essential fat inside of these agencies and then work from there. It's the same thing with the border. Get the border wall in place and then you put the policies in place. But first, you got to stop the bleeding. All right. So anyway, so Loper Bright is basically a New Jersey fishing company, and then the article reads, should they have to pay the expenses of federal regulators that are monitoring their activities? The defendant in the case is Gina Raimondo, the current Secretary of Commerce. And again, basically, these fishermen, they have boats, and these boats are only a certain size. They can only put a certain amount of people on the boats. And now, instead of putting an employee that can make the company money and can make it citizen money, they have to put a federal government employee that doesn't do anything but sits there and watch them the entire freaking time, doesn't add anything but weight to the boat, and they have to pay his salary. And government could force a private business to pay this guy's salary. It says here, if the court sides with Loper Bright, it will effectively reinterpret Chevron Deference and significantly reduce the policy-setting powers of federal agencies. And guys, this is so important because we don't think about this. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. I hate the bureaucratic state, and I believe you should too. If you love freedom, you should hate the bureaucratic state. These people circumvent the will of the people. These people circumvent the will of the voters. Basically, basically these agencies, they don't have to run for office. You install people in these agencies and they just run the federal government through these agencies. And then, Joe Biden or even congressmen could say, hey, it wasn't me, it was this agency. Well, wait a minute, fool, you're the one that funds the agency. But they can get away with that stuff. There's no accountability. All right, so funding these bureaucratic agencies is just a simple way to circumvent the will of the voters. All right, so there are 4 justices on the Supreme Court that have been critical of the doctrine for giving too much power to the federal bureaucracies, and I bet you can guess who these justices are. It's really simple. Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Justice Clarence Thomas, and Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh isn't always the most conservative, but he is amongst the most conservative, or amongst the conservatives or constitutionalists. He doesn't always get it right, but he gets it right more than he doesn't, in my opinion. And so I'm happy for that. But I feel like he's starting to find his way on the Supreme Court after the abuse that he took. All right. But again, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas. Who do we have to worry about? You got it. John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, who could potentially forever change the course of the administrative law in the United States of America. But unfortunately, we can't count on them because I feel, and I'm concerned, that they've fell victim to the DC elites. They don't want to be criticized. They want to hang out at the parties, or they want to be looked at as cool and all that kind of stuff. I know Amy Coney Barrett has some kids that are still in school, and so that may play a part. I don't know. But certainly she has not been the RGB of the right that I was hoping that she would be thus far. All right. So anyway, and when I say RGB, I mean Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a complete leftist, but she made no bones about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, good God, I just wish that Republicans or conservatives and constitutionalists on the bench had the courage that lefties had. Obviously, the 3 liberal justices, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor. I believe that Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor shouldn't even be on the court, but I think they're on the court because it's the DEI. But nonetheless, they're always going to side with big government. All right. So at the very least, the consensus in Chevron deference will be curtailed as long as at least 5 justices. So we at least have to get John Roberts or an Amy Coney Barrett. Hopefully we will get both, but they'll need to side with the fishing company. And if that happens, Just the News writes, the impacts are likely to be significant and far reaching. Of course they would. And I'll tell you why this is important. A reversal of the doctrine would extend to every administrative agency, or just say the administrative state, right, and the federal government, from the Department of Energy deciding on its own to determine what sustainable energy means. So the Department of Energy can determine, hey, listen, you can't use fossil fuels. You can't drive, cars with a combustible engine. Did I just say that right? With a nice engine. Let me just say that there. I'm getting confused in my head right now. Or the FDA arbitrarily designating what is and isn't organic. I mean, guys, some of the stuff that falls under organic, it's an absolute joke. It's so amazing. I watched it. I can't recall who did a documentary or a show on this at once, but even at, what's that place, Whole Foods, I believe it is. You go to Whole Foods and they claim that all this and this stuff is organic, and then it's packaged. So everything that was organic in it is no longer organic. No longer organic, but they're allowed to use that word because they did, they crossed some regulatory hurdle. The same is true even for meats, whether it's chicken or red meat. They have to cross a small hurdle in order to be considered organic. Like range chickens, I forget the exact numbers, but it doesn't have to be, these chickens were, range, or what is it? What is it called, Gabe? Do you remember? Basically, they're just roaming free. Free range chickens, maybe that's what it's called. They're roaming free. Nah, they can do that. Technically, they can let them out of cages for like a week or 2 or a month or something like that, and then they're considered organic or free range chickens. Or that's the game that the federal government plays. It's just about control. But anyway, the Chevron deference case. This is the SCOTUS case, again, that no one is talking about, that every American should know about. This is going to be huge. It is going to be huge. All right. Set aside the November election. Guys, listen, I'm going to close it out here. I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you can go to get your podcast: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Until next time, do not grow weary doing good, and God bless you.